Welcome back, everyone. I'm Josh. We are Team Buren Tennessee, cryptid hunters, I guess. Cryptid researchers? Cryptid field researchers.
Field investigators, yeah.
Field investigators. I'm here with Houston and Randy, and welcome to the Buren Tennessee podcast. Today we are going to talk about the Tennessee Wildman, myth or monster. I think we all land on one side of that question, if it's a myth or monster. So let's get into what we love the most and why we have this team, why we do what we do, and it's looking for the Tennessee Wildman. So let's get into some of the historical records of the Wildman sightings in Tennessee. Randy, do you want to lead us off? Do you know when the first sightings started happening?
The first reports that go back in journals and stuff, newspapers and stuff like that, go back to the 1700s.
1700s, Jesus.
Yeah.
What about Cherokee stories or anything like that?
Oh yeah. I mean,
the verbal history.
Of course, the Native Americans, the Cherokee, all the tribes around this area had names for Sasquatch. All of them are different. I used to know the one for the Cherokee, but it's evading me at the moment.
Was it Stone Man?
It translated to Stone Man, yeah, because it throws stones at you.
Yeah, let's get into some more. Let's get into the history of the Wildman in Tennessee. What are some of the? I mean, we brought it up. We've talked about it many times. I don't know if you guys want to get into it first, or do you want to start someplace else?
Which one?
You talking about the one that was captured?
Yeah, the captured one.
Yeah, we can start there.
Yeah, let's get into that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
In October 26, 1878, the Louisville Courier-Journal wrote an article about a wild man that was captured in Van Buren County, Tennessee, which is a county over from where we are, me and Houston are. And it basically described how this one gentleman named Onslow G. Broyles, who was a dentist in Sparta, Tennessee, him and a group of 5 men ran this thing down, basically chased in after it.
Can you imagine chasing down one of these damn things on horseback?
Yeah, they were on horseback. September the 15th was the date that the guy actually said that they took off after this thing.
Mm-hmm. And
so they know an area in the Caney Fork River, a bend where this thing fishes a lot, right? And so they go there, wait for this thing. They said this thing goes down to get a bunch of fish, comes up with arms filled with fish, and they take in after it on horseback. And according to the article, they spent the better part of the day running after this thing, trying to tire it out. And so they tried to lariat it with lassos, and they could never get a rope around it. And finally, they said that they managed to. The way it described it was something a rope-like net. They managed to run this thing into it, and it got all tangled up. And the men got off their horses, basically tried to go to grab this thing, and it ended up hurting 2 of them, including
I bet
the dentist. The dentist was supposedly all scuffed up and bruised pretty badly from this ordeal, from this thing. Let me read you something actually from.
Is this the one I've got a picture of the map on? I can throw that up.
Yes, it is. Yeah, you can pull it up. Yeah.
No, before you read that, Randy, here's my question: is there any did they just go after this thing to capture it just to do it, or was there any stuff in the article about was it harassing the town? Was it doing stuff?
No, they basically described that they knew that it was living in this one area because it had a habit of fishing in that one bend.
Mm. So
but it just
let's
people
go
in the
get
area,
this.
People in the region knew about it.
There we go.
So the article says, the wild man brought to the city yesterday by Dr. O.G. Broyles of Sparta is truly a mysterious and wonderful creature. He will be exhibited throughout the county by Manager Wallen of the Metropolitan, who is the third owner in this remarkable being, who promises to successfully baffle all scientists who desire to give a satisfactory explanation of its unnatural appearance. Before entering into the details of his capture, which form was quite a thrilling and interesting episode of itself, a description of the curiosity, which promises to excite more attention than Barnum's "What is it?" will be given. At a distance, the general outline of this figure would indicate that he is only an ordinary man. Close examination, though, shows that his whole body is covered with a layer of scales and hair. The scales, which drop off at regular periods in the spring and fall, like the skin of a rattlesnake. He has a heavy growth of hair on his head and body, a dark reddish beard about 6 inches long. His eyes present a frightful appearance, being at least twice the size of an average-sized eye. Some of his toes are formed together, which give his feet a strange appearance, and his height, when standing perfectly erect, is about 6 foot 5 inches tall. A nervous twitching of his muscles shows a desire to escape, and he is constantly looking in the direction of the door from which he has entered. His entire body must be wet at intervals, and should this be neglected, he begins immediately to manifest great uneasiness. His flesh becomes feverish, and his sufferings cannot be alleviated until the water is applied. At times he is dangerous, and yesterday morning, when Mr. Wallen attempted to place him in a wagon, in which he intended to bring him to the theater, it occupied some time. The strange creature acted in the most mysterious manner, refusing obstinately for some time to get into the wagon. He has quite a sharp appetite, having eaten a meal yesterday morning that would have fully satiated a full 4 men. With the exception of fish, his meals are all prepared in the ordinary way, but the fish are eaten entirely raw. I find this part really interesting. Dr. Brohl says that when no one is there and he is all alone, he will sometimes mutter in an unintelligible jargon, which it would be impossible for anyone to understand, but that in the presence of visitors, he remains perfectly silent. Now, there's some things in this that, to me,
I have a lot of questions.
Yeah,
I have a lot of questions. So the hair and the scales. So what
Yeah.
was? They said they had like scale-like skin.
like rattlesnake-like skin underneath the hair, yeah.
Huh.
And it said it would slough off in the fall and in the spring. I don't know if that's there. There was one of the journals where a later journal that talked about seeing this thing, 2 doctors, and the doctors could not explain medically it having parasites or anything like that to explain why it had these scaly skin like that.
Yeah, I've never heard that until this. That's why.
Yeah.
That's.
But it sounded like it was in patches almost.
Yeah.
Like where there was no hair that had this rattlesnake-like skin. I wondered if it was mange.
Mange? Yeah.
Maybe? Yeah.
I was thinking maybe mange. I didn't know if they even knew what mange was back then. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know if they did or not.
Because that's what it sounds like. But saying it sloughs off in the like a season.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. But what the interesting things about the description of this thing, though, it says that its eyes are twice as big as a normal man's. That's one thing. If you talk to people that have seen these things up close, they talk about how big their eyes are, especially if you've seen them at night when they're glowing.
Yeah.
They look huge. So I thought that was an interesting detail that it's specifically talked about that this thing's eyes were twice as big as a normal person's. It also talked about that the feet on its feet looked strange because the digits had fused together. That's actually something that you find in the South a lot, is 3- and 4-toed footprints instead of 5-toed footprints, almost as if the digits are kind of melding together.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that there's been studies done, and in primates especially, inbreeding. If there's generational inbreeding, one of the first signs of that physically is the melding of basically digits on fingers and toes. So I found that interesting.
Yeah. You're right. Because when we found tracks on the trail, they were like 4-toed, most of them.
Yeah.
And
there was one that I found at the campsite, the main campsite up there, where it actually had stepped into a mole hill and just sunk. The whole footprint just sank perfectly, and it looked like it had 4 toes. It didn't look like you couldn't find a 5th toe anywhere.
That was the one behind the cabin in C-section,
Yes.
right? Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah, it was the way I remember, I remember you like, look at this footprint. And then when you kind of stood in the same area, like, look, if you were just standing here, like right by this tree, like you could tell like where he was posted up, like where he was just standing, probably just perfectly still, just watching.
Watching the whole campsite, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
And
interesting.
as for how they captured this thing,
yeah, okay. So this thing's down on the bend just fishing.
Yeah.
So the motive was just to catch this thing and fucking turn it into a sideshow.
Yeah, pretty much, because it says right here, Dr. Broyles says that until about 18 months ago, he had not attempted the capture, although he has been watching the creature's actions for the past 12 years. About the 15th of September, he started into the mountains fully determined to succeed in this capture. The wild man of the woods, as he is termed by the people in the vicinity, was unusually fleet of foot and possessed with a great deal of agility, bounding over the mountainous ravines in the most fearless of manner. During the chase, they kept the wild man constantly in sight, and their plan was to tire him out, in which they finally succeeded. He was pushed through the wild, mountainous country over lakes and precipices until his pursuers almost despaired of success. Stratagem was finally resorted to, and the lariat was thrown at him without success, and then a kind of net trap out of ropes was formed, into which he was decoyed and captured. He ran fearlessly into the net and became entangled in the meshes. Captured but not conquered, a struggle ensued in which Dr. Broyles was seriously wounded. The wild man fought with his hands after a fashion of a bear and bruised and scratched the doctor in a frightful manner. At last, they quietened their unwilling victim. I like how they bring up that this thing didn't want to go with them.
How'd they quiet?
At last, they quietened their unwilling victim
right over the head.
Brought him to Sparta. The doctor immediately telegraphed Mr. Wallen, who immediately purchased a third interest in the wonder and had him brought to Louisville yesterday morning. The presence of this wild man in Louisville has excited considerable attention among the doctors and also a large crowd of curious persons who are anxious to see this wonderful creature. There will be only one public exhibition in the city, which takes place at the Metropolitan Theater Saturday afternoon.
So did that happen? Did that exhibition happen?
Nobody knows.
Is there any report of that?
That was the last known, as far as I know, the last known report of it.
Mother, because there's still like probably family members. If there was someone who went to that, there'd be family members still in that area that would be like, "Oh, my great grandfather told me about going to this thing." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't know they watched it for 12 years before they did anything.
That's.
They were aware of it, yeah.
So, okay, so we've been doing this 8 years, guys? Like as a group here. So we got 4 more years before we go after ours.
Before we have to run one down with horses.
Hey, history repeats itself, and we're in the same area. Yeah, we're gonna get some horses, baby.
I'm scared to death of horses. There's a problem.
Are you?
I am.
Why?
Scared to death of horses. I love horses. I'm scared to death of riding them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I kind of grew up. My uncles all had horses and stuff, so I kind of grew up.
Nice.
Yeah, kind of know.
I like
how
how we're
ride.
really talking about doing this with horses, like it's.
Oh, you don't think I want to? Look, we gotta try something. We gotta try something new. Okay, so he watches them for 12 years, or at least it seems like the town kind of just knew about it, which is kind of common.
Well, on the map where I posted, that this thing was basically they started running after this thing originally, that bend there.
Yeah.
That's about, I think, roughly 7.5, 8 miles outside of Sparta. So you got to think, like back in the day, 7, 8 miles outside of town that you're living in, like where this dentist was holed up, like that's a pretty good ways.
Yeah.
You go out to
on horseback.
And I also found out that his wife had died the year previous. So I am completely convinced
he was
that
bored.
This man he didn't give a shit anymore.
He was like,
you
know what? He was like what you've said to me. You're like, you know what? If I get killed by one, at least I go out, like
bragging rights in the afterlife.
Yeah, like killed by Sasquatch. Okay, so he observes this. That's interesting. So his wife dies the year before. I think you're right on that. He was just like, screw it at this point. How old was he? Does it say how old he was when he did this? I'm feeling like this is like an old country boy.
You see, I can find out really fast. This is in 1970, 1878.
1878.
He was 50 years old.
He was a tough son of a bitch.
Yeah. Damn, that was back in the day. Too,
him
man.
and it was him and 5 guys.
Him and 5 other guys on horseback.
That's all we need. That's all you see. Look, it just
two more.
Just need a couple. We got Catman, so we just need one more. So he goes after this thing. See, I'm very intrigued by the whole setup for this now. Sorry. He had to convince 5 other guys to be like, let's go get this thing and show it off. But here's the other part of the story. I'm going to jump forward ahead. It sounds like he domesticated it a little bit. He had to coax it into the wagon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It seemed like, because if you look.
Well, if you look at when the article was published was in October, I think like late October, and this thing was supposedly captured around September the 15th.
The hell
so he had already had this thing for almost 6 weeks.
Yeah,
4 to 5 to 6 weeks.
What did he make to keep this thing in? Because it's not like there were like an abundance of facilities he could have just rented and stuff back then. It was like wooden barns.
Those old-fashioned circus
cages,
like with wheels on it. That's what it sounds like.
I'm curious if he bought one when the carnival came to town. Right? Like, hey, how much for one of these carnival things? Like, why do you want it? He's like, don't ask questions.
There's all these questions you have to ask yourself when it comes to this. Like, how much did he plan on this? Like, how am I going to
12 years of planning.
There is a plan here. Okay, as a filmmaker, like I'm looking at this as the narrative side, and I'm like, yeah, there is a lot of setup here. Because they went after him in a day. And I know it took them a day to do it, but they got him. And then they ran it into a net, which meant there was some form of setup. So there's
it's like basically right up ahead, put the net across some trees, we'll run him across.
Could you? God, the rush chasing down his ass. Okay, they get this thing down, which I know they tired it the hell out, and still though, how did they get it out? That's a big creature. From what we can tell, the size
6'5" is an inch taller than I am.
Yeah,
and that's in 1878. That is enormous in 1878.
Yeah, and these things. They were outrunning the fucking horses.
Yeah,
that means you should be able to outrun a horse. It's only an inch taller. I'm just curious. I'm just imagining them all struggling with this Sasquatch, and then the one dude comes up with a flapjack and just over the back of the head and knocks him out. Yeah, I'm curious how they kept this thing.
How did they get it back? That's like I said, that's 7.5, 8 miles.
They
back to Sparta.
They must have made a sled or something to pull them on through the woods.
Yeah.
Or an extra horse to throw them over. They had to have just hog-tied this poor thing.
Yeah.
I know we're all laughing here, but this is kind of funny. If you think about this,
the logistics of how he pulled this off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was just him and 5 guys. It's just bro trip. Just lassos, just rope and horses, man. I think us as researchers and field researchers, we should all get our shit together. I'm going to be honest.
If they did this with horses and ropes, then we should have this under control.
Is there a horse rental places down by you guys? I'm assuming
there's Fall Creek Falls. Yeah.
Okay. Just curious.
Yep.
I'm just curious.
I feel like we should be more qualified than a dentist.
Dentists in 1878, those were surgeons, and they did everything. So
he was a town engineer.
Yeah. He was the first dentist of Sparta, so
the first man.
That was back in the day where if another dentist came to the town, you could literally burn his house down and run him off. And
now I'm curious if there's like any
And
family.
again, this guy was 50 years old. Like, he's 50 years old when he did this. Like,
Do we know if he has
was,
any like living relatives now?
Oh, I'm sure he does. He has to.
We
He
need
had 4 kids.
we gotta
The
track
thing that
them.
I read on him.
We gotta track them down.
So
We gotta check in with them, because the story stops. So he gets it. You know, he's had it for what, a year now? Because he says, he has it through the seasons. So he's taking care of this thing for a long time.
it does say, yeah, it does say that it does it in the spring and the fall. So I don't know how they would know that.
But there's a part, I think near the end, he says, there's a point he's trying to coax him into the wagon. I think that's like near the end of the first year of having the thing captured. I think he was taking it to the theater for the exhibition. I'm just trying to figure out the logistics here of how he took care of this damn thing, and then also just like was moving it around. Because it's so fucking interesting, so fascinating. Because there's articles on this. There's like,
Yeah.
Now, are there any town records that Sparta might have? That might be something we need to look into.
I don't know.
Where did you find that article? I mean, I know it was out of the paper, but like, was that just on the internet, or did you go locally and find that?
When did you first hear that, like, the story?
Oh, I've heard that story since back in the 90s.
Really?
It was online way back.
Dang. Let's get back into the description though of this wild man. Let's talk about the look of these things.
He said it had reddish. He said he had reddish hair.
And that's kind of a report that we have in our area. We have Big Red.
Yep.
Pretty infamous in our area of Tennessee. But that's also a kind of a common trait that's seen from eyewitnesses a lot of the time is like an auburn or reddish, dirty red hair. Which I think is fucking even better camouflage in the forest, especially down in Tennessee. Because that red hair like really catches light rays, and it just kind of it really feathers your outline. Like it really feathers your outline a lot, so it really makes it hard to see.
We talked to two girls who saw the way they described it. They said it looked like a giant orangutan. They said that it's hair. They said it was the same red, same sheen. You know, that really, really glossy sheen you see in orangutan.
Yeah.
It said that that's what this thing had.
And its eyes are huge. What are the other descriptions we have on it? What in the article? Can you kind of?
Did they say they had to keep throwing water on it?
Yeah, they had that.
Yeah, what was up with that?
I don't know. I don't know if that was because of the scaly skin or what.
I don't know. Maybe, read that again though. What was the? What was it? Was he moaning in pain or something? That's why they had to throw the water on him.
Says
had to water Sasquatch every morning.
His entire body must be wet at intervals, and should this be neglected, he begins immediately to manifest great uneasiness. His flesh becomes feverish, and his sufferings cannot be alleviated until the water is applied.
Huh. What is that? What the hell is that?
This makes me wonder if like the reason they caught this thing was because this thing was sick.
Sick, yeah.
That it was suffering from, some kind of.
Now here's the other thing. Did it get like ostracized from its family unit because it's sick?
I wondered that too. Like, why else you hear all these other stories of like, supposedly them being shot and they come to their aid.
Yeah.
All that stuff, but nothing came to this thing's aid.
Yeah, the amount of times I've heard like, people, any aggressive like human aggression towards one of these things is usually met with like greater aggression back by a group. Lots and lots of stories and evidence of that. So that's something maybe with mange or something contagious. It seemed like
a leper squatch.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, sending away the sick one. You gotta stay away from the family unit. Um, that's oh man. Then it mumbled to itself at night.
Yep.
Which,
Yeah, that part's always creepy.
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, have you been out for? You've heard that stuff, right, Houston?
The samurai chatter. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've not heard that part.
Oh, you
Yeah.
haven't? Okay, yeah, I have, and that was at the quarry.
Yeah, we've heard of the quarry that time, and me and Gatos heard it at Fall Creek Falls before too.
That was the one where you guys separated, right? And you thought it was was that the one? You guys were out there. You guys split up, and then Gato was talking to who he thought was you at one point. Is that the right story?
I'm not sure.
There was one time.
I think it was when Mark was with you too, because they kept like
That's what it was.
Mark
was
and
with you.
Gato thought that they heard you. They were like
Oh,
yelling at you, and
yes.
you're like, "Oh no!"
Yeah. They went over running to where they heard what they thought was me talking and stuff. And when they got over there, I wasn't there. I was completely in a whole other area.
Jeez. So what we know is that at the end of this the dentist gets this thing. It seems like he does the exhibition by the end of the article because he's taking him to the theater. They're only going to do one. And then wasn't he supposed to take it up to Philadelphia? Up to Philly or something? Or New York?
I'm not sure.
And then that's it. No other. Huh.
The two doctors that got to look at it, by the way, it says yesterday afternoon from 1 to 4, a private exhibition was given, and a number of physicians were present, among them Doctors Brady and Carrie Blackburn, who said that his scaly condition could not be attributed to any known skin disease, but undoubtedly he was born in that condition. He will be on exhibition in one of the private rooms at the Metropolitan Theater this afternoon and tomorrow between the hours of 1 and 4 o'clock.
And then that's where that story ends. There's nothing left. They don't bring it up again. There's no more talk of the dentist and his new adopted Sasquatch son. You know, I would assume, because he's a dentist, there would have been some talk of the creature's teeth. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess he was just happy to be alive, considering he supposedly took a beating from this thing.
Here's the other part is like, imagine being at that point when they like get him in the net and then they're like, okay, what do we do now? It's like, get him, Ray.
Get it, boys.
Get him, get a jump on him. Cause that'd be like, these things are strong. That's a beast that you're going to deal with.
Like jumping on a freaking water buffalo.
Yeah. Well, he said it was what, 6'5"?
6'5".
Did you know?
Yep.
Did he describe possibly like a weight?
No, he didn't.
Oh, I was hoping he'd be like bulky and shit, big fucking. Well, here we can now segue into the next part. Is how the Wildman compares to other cryptids, to like Bigfoot and skunk ape, because this is an actual. I didn't realize this until I got into it, into doing all this stuff with you guys. Was that, apparently we have something else. Like the Pacific Northwest has Bigfoot or Sasquatch.
Yeah.
We have something else entirely different. There's something, whatever we're dealing with is not Bigfoot what they deal with. So let's talk about that.
That's what they claim.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they claim. So, I mean, the only images we have of what is the apparently the skunk ape is that one, that like the notorious one. It looks like an orangutan in the swamp.
The Miyaka photo.
Yeah, the Miyaka photo. Yeah. Which is a great photo. I think it's terrifying.
When that photo first came out, I got to see M.K. Davis's very first like enhancements of that shit. Man.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was like, check this out, and it was like you could see all the pine needles like in its fur,
Oh wow.
like individual pine needles, and it was just like, man, that's not a costume. Like that's something out in the freaking woods.
Yeah, there it is.
I don't know if it'll let me. Yeah.
Miyake pictures.
And see, one of the interesting things about the story behind those pictures right there is that those were found by a researcher in a sheriff department, uh, basically backlog. Like it wasn't anybody that
Wasn't like a
came
research.
forward
Yeah.
and was like, hey, I did this, or hey, I saw this. And the lady that supposedly took the pictures basically said that someone's orangutan is eating my apples. And this thing was coming into her backyard and eating apples off a tree.
Oh, that's wild. That's wild. Now, the skunk ape is what region? That's like Florida,
Florida, the Everglades.
Everglades, yeah.
Yeah.
Now we just had Chester Moore at our convention. He did a talk of feral apes down in Florida.
Yeah.
So there's always a strong possibility of, that is possibly a fucking orangutan. But
Yeah,
that
be.
photo itself, though, is you
Well,
look at it.
The thing in that photo, if that's an orangutan, that's the biggest orangutan
Yeah,
ever.
that's the difference
compared to that palmetto bush.
If at first looking at it, you're like, oh, it's an orangutan. But then as you stare at it, you start seeing the differences, and you start noticing like, oh wait, maybe that's not. Yeah. I know that has like a pretty scary face, and I always see orangutans. They always kind of have kind faces, very like inquisitive faces, you know.
Yeah, if you look at those two pictures, you'll notice one of them's kind of it's kind of a normal face, and the second picture, the face looks almost surprised.
Yeah.
She said that she walked out there in the dark, and with a flash, and went like that twice. So she just lit this thing up and freaked it out.
That's wild. Well, good on her though. Do you know when that photo like was logged? Because you said it was backlogged.
It was like, yeah, I'm not sure, early 2000s, 2000 maybe.
Yeah, because she
maybe
had
even the late 90s.
Yeah, well, she had like a digital power camera, or I don't know if that was like a camera. You know what I mean? Like a film camera that she used. If it was late 90s, digital cameras weren't really coming out. Those power shots in the early 2000s. Yeah, you had like kind of digital ones in 2003, 2004. They started ramping up.
I'm not sure exactly what year it came out.
Yeah. Well, I'm just curious because when the researcher found it, what year he found it and it came out versus, he said it was backlogged. So yeah, it could be back then. Imagine she takes that to the police, like, can you come get this orangutan, and shows them the photos.
That was what she supposedly was trying to do. They didn't believe her. They didn't believe her, so she took pictures of it, and they still was like, ma'am, that's not our job.
Call animal control. That's wild. In the comparisons to like Bigfoot, Sasquatch, to the Tennessee Wildman, I don't see too many differences.
No, I think they're the same thing. I think it's just a different word for it. I
think we have. I will say this. I think we have a variation
an abundance of descriptions here in Tennessee that seem to point at them being more human looking in the face than ape. Over by and large, overwhelmingly, everyone I've talked to, whenever they talk about seeing these things like close up in the face, they talk about how human like they look.
Yeah, that's specific to the Tennessee region. That's a pretty down here, which is interesting. Do you think? I gotta make a joke now. Do you think that the moonshiners were banging the Bigfoot up on the mountain?
I think it could be because this is going to sound horrible. I think that there's a chance that back in the past, whether they were slaves that were trying to get to be freed, or they were taken even from these things and bred with. Uh, that could explain where you're getting all the human looking faces. If there was a lot of human, if you think of these things as being hybrids,
Yeah.
like a lot of people talk about now, you might get that from where you've got the errant person taken here and there, because a lot of the Tennessee Wildman stories from the 1700s and the 1800s are them trying to accost women. Like they're coming out of the woods and coming after a woman, and the woman basically freaks out, goes and tells the men folk in the town, and they get a posse up, and the posse goes looking for the Bigfoot, or the wild man, I should say. So it does make me wonder if there's a large percentage of Homo sapien in our Sasquatch in this region.
Yeah, because I mean, even the Cherokee talked about that, having there would be times they go to war with the forest people, right? What do they call them?
They would talk about that they would take women.
Yeah, because they would take the women and stuff.
Yeah.
And then they would have to
sometimes
go to war
the women
with
would come back, sometimes they didn't.
Yep.
Sometimes they would come back and they would be pregnant.
Yep.
So
I mean, there's that story from up in the great north of Canada, the trapper who got taken.
Oh yeah, and that's it. Actually, yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. British Columbia.
Yeah.
Albert Osman.
Yes.
Yeah.
He got taken up there in his sleeping bag. He got scooped up.
If you read his account, that he made in the 40s, where he officially put that story out.
Yep.
He talks about that it was his opinion that he called him the old man, the really big Sasquatch that slung him over his shoulder and brought him there. He said that the old man brought him there for his daughter. That there was a young female there, and he had the impression that he was supposed to be the husband for the husband material for the.
I'm gonna live here now. I'm gonna become a Sasquatch. I'm just.
So.
That's. It's so like. When you get into this and you start really, like we've talked about, is like once you start getting all the stories and you start learning all these accounts and interviews and stuff, and it all starts just like, man, this is all starting to like line up. It all starts connecting together. You're starting to see the pattern and stuff. Now I have like I said earlier, I was like, I think that like what we're dealing with Tennessee Wildman, like maybe a slight variation on what the Pacific Northwest has, as Sasquatch, just because of the cave system, that is the Cumberland Plateau that's under most of this the area we research. I feel like we have a lot of accounts out of like a lot of the, especially the mountainous areas with these things, is they're massive, like big. I feel like we have more like slender. The descriptions down here are a lot slender, and I feel like that has to deal with the cave systems too.
Yeah.
That they use those, and it's being smaller and stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Overwhelmingly, the descriptions we get around here, for whatever reason, they describe them being leaner.
Yeah.
Than big and bulky, like they do in the Pacific Northwest.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be because they've adapted the caves,
the
caves in the area.
And I feel like they'd have to have be bigger and bulkier for the north, anyways, just for the cold.
Yeah.
I mean, it gets cold in Tennessee, but it doesn't get like the north cold.
No. It gets pretty cold up on the plateau during the winter.
Yeah, it does. I mean, that's fair. I mean, we had to get off the mountain because of just the cold front. Remember that from that that trip?
Yeah.
I remember you described like, we have to get off the mountain. I was like, what are you talking about? It's just a cold front. You're like, no, it's about to drop. So let's get into what we've done as a team. Houston, why don't you tell us like what's something from your trips out with Randy? Like, what was? I know you had some memorable experiences, but like, what's one that still kind of like sits with you? Is there any one specific one that just kind of sits with you?
Probably the one. Let me see. I'll pull up some pictures here. These are not the best pictures. Actually, the lady who called us, she had the best picture. She took him with her tablet. So this is when there was a lady that called and said that she had a building towards the end of her driveway, and they had pretty much turned it into a game room. They played like pool and stuff there. They had, just different memorabilia. And on the back side, they had just put in a glass French doors. And let me show you this picture over here. On the back side of that, that is Randy.
There's
It
Randy.
didn't have any, like it dropped off maybe like 2.5 foot to the ground. And about above eye level from where we were standing inside the building looking out, there was actually like a face print and thumb print that we got that, again, I mean, Randy talked about he was 6'4", and I mean, that's him, trying to reach up to where it is right there. But said that this thing was, she came home, found this face print and stuff. She had different activity in the past. I believe Randy probably know more about that than me, just talking about like the dogs, different things that they would sense when they were around. She noticed like the tree arches and stuff like that. But we talked to her for a little while. But yeah, having an actual face print where you could see like the little hairs and stuff like that. That one was one of the ones that's like, okay, I guess I'm gonna have to believe Randy here.
And that was your first outing, right? That was the first time you went out.
One
with
of the
Randy.
first, yes.
It's really
Like I said-
hard to deny when you see the face print and you're like, oh, you're just someone out there doing it. And then I remember
It
Randy-
is really hard to tell in the pictures that we took, but the pictures she had, it really did. I mean, it looked good.
We'll have to get those, see if we can get those from her. So she's had a lot of activity in the past there. Randy, you want to
Yeah,
tell us?
they still have activity to this day.
Do you want to tell us some about that?
Well, her husband was a contractor in
Mhm.
the military, and so she said that basically, when you go to their property, without explaining where the property is, because we don't do that,
Yeah.
they've built up like fences and stuff, like wooden fences around the whole property. And she was like, I did all of this. And she's like, when he would be off overseas, she's like, I would be out here, day in, day out during the summer, putting this fence together. And she said, I would eat my lunch out here. And she said that I noticed that while I was out here putting the fence up, I would hear wood knocks out in the woods across from the road. And she said, and then I would go to sit down. And when I go to sit down to eat my lunch, there's the wood knocks again across the road. And she said that a couple of times she heard wood knocks, like responding back behind her house.
Mm-hmm.
And so she said that she very much had the impression that they were keeping an eye on her. And they live at the very, very end of this road. This house is.
Mm-hmm.
She did mention multiple times though, like it was never like a frightening thing. Like she was never creeped out.
She wasn't scared. She said she felt like that they were keeping an eye on her when her husband was gone. And she said that she got to the point where she was telling her husband, this is happening when you're not here. And he told us, he's like, I really didn't believe her. And but she said that there was one time when they were sitting on their porch, their patio, and she was like, she said something about that she knocked on something, and one of them knocked back, like not even far away from the patio.
Oh, that's freaky.
And and so he was like, he's like, I had to admit something was going on because what the hell just did that?
Yeah.
But then they had the face print, and he was basically, he'd resigned to basically believing her after the face print, because he was telling us, he's like, like, what are you supposed to do to that?
Yeah. I mean, I've noticed a lot of the people we've interviewed down in the area, most of them have overwhelming majority have like a pretty peaceful coexistence. If they have
Yeah.
the wild men on their land. And it always seems like they're just kind of keeping track of the humans. Now, part of me wants to think that they're like, look, guys, we can't fuck with them, or they're gonna send the horses out after us again. Like, they
We
tell.
remember what happened to great grandpa.
Yeah, he got jumped. He got ran off the cliff.
One of the things that makes this one significant for me too is there was another, what would you call it? I mean, there was just somebody else that we were talking to that lived like 3 houses down from these guys. But the way that it was on the ridge line, it was, I mean, within half a mile. And so we, was up there talking to this lady, I don't know, like a couple months before.
Mhm.
And she kind of, told us her spiel. And that probably was one of the first ones, if not the first one I was there on. And then coming back, like I said, a couple months later, I remember it was fair week. We went up there during the fair, or maybe they said that it happened during the
It happened
fair.
during the fair week, yeah.
But we
It was
were
a
up
week
there,
after,
and this
yeah.
other lady was, telling us, "Oh, this is what was taking place at the house," and it was just like almost the same exact story, same exact interaction with everybody, or what was going on, and they had no clue that these two, were calling us, telling us that this stuff was happening, and so that one was again a little creepy. That it's like, okay, well, something's going on.
Yeah. At one point, the lady had actually given us or showed me a photo, and she's like, "I know this isn't going to prove anything," but she's like, "I took this photo while I was sitting on the porch, and their porch like has this beautiful view of like the the rest of the mountainside."
Mm-hmm.
And but she's like, "But we were out here on the back patio," and she's like, "An Atticus is what they call him in that area."
Yeah.
Said Atticus come around the ridge over there. And she's like, we watched him walking, and as soon as we started kind of noticing, looking at him, he just sat down, and we took this picture. And so she showed me this picture, and like it looks like a tree stump,
Mm-hmm.
way off in the distance. It's too far to be able to make out anything. And she said that she's like, this isn't going to prove anything, but she's like, that's him right there. That's him. And what was wild was that turned out to be the ridge line right behind the house of the people that got the facer imprint. So,
and that's the other part we've talked about is like people, neighbors won't share even they're very friendly down south, but even they sometimes don't want to talk about this shit.
yeah, they don't want to. Yeah, especially with their neighbors. Yeah,
Yeah, like they don't want their neighbors being like, mm-mm. No,
It's like-
I don't.
it's
I don't.
like-
have-
it's about probably 3 miles to another road that we've talked to many people that live on that road too, and literally we talked to people that lived in one house, and then there's a rental house like an Airbnb, and then we talked to the people in the house next to the Airbnb. So the Airbnb is like between both of these two houses, and talked to both of the people in both of the houses about the same Bigfoot stuff that they both saw. Both of them had firsthand sightings. And when asked, like, do you guys, I'm like, do you guys talk to your neighbors? And they're like, no. The one family was like, no, the neighbors are too old. They never come outside. And the old people were like, no, we don't talk to anybody because we just mind our own business and blah. And so they were literally having the exact same activity happen. They literally both saw the same freaking thing in the same area. They got an Airbnb between them, and they don't talk to each other.
God. You imagine, that you pull up to the one house, you guys, talk to them, and then, a few days later, that person sees you pull up to the other person's house, and they're like, the hell?
It was several months between.
Yeah, no, but still, like, seeing you, like, wait, I know those guys. Like, why are they here? Oh. That's wild, yeah. And that one stuck with you, right? The first one always sticks with you. That first experience. Yeah. Yeah. That one when the fantasy idea of Sasquatch suddenly becomes reality and you're like, uh-oh. It becomes a little bit more, it fucks with your head. That's why I laugh a lot with these stories. I just laugh about it.
Oh, yeah.
I just find it funny now. Like, yeah.
It's
What
always amusing.
Go
Go ahead.
That face imprint happened during the day because it happened during Fair Week on a Thursday, and they explained like how they actually helped take care of certain things at the fair, the like a presentation down there,
Yeah.
and that they were doing the presentation. They got done and come back and decided to play some pool, and that's when they saw this facial imprint. And so that means that like you could have, if you were driving down that road, you could have looked over at that side building, and the damn thing would have been standing there,
Looking at a window.
looking in the window.
Oh. Which means that thing has been peeking in the windows a bunch, which is like a common trait, or again another.
Yeah, and I
yeah.
think they specifically said too, they were like, this was like a remodel, and so it was just almost like a, hey, well, something's different here. I'm going to look in. Hey, there's glass here now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what's going on in here, guys? Oh, hey, guys.
And it's thumbprint, man. Its thumbprint, like where its facial imprint was right here, its thumbprint was like right there. Like,
Oh yeah, it
where it
came
just,
up and
you
put
know,
it.
I
Yeah,
just
look
remember
at
how big the nose was too, which again you can't see in the pictures.
yeah, its nose
but-
was like 3 inches wide.
So
and
yeah,
you could just see like the little like brow line up there, like the little bitty.
Yeah,
which
this like
that's a big brow line to be sticking up against the to kind of forward ridge line there.
but you could see individual hairs going through that stuff, everything. It was
Yeah.
wild.
I remember when you called me after that one, and you're like, I got to tell you about this. You were really excited about that one. You were really excited.
Well,
about
yeah,
that
that's
one.
not every day you get to see something like that.
Yeah, I know. You were so excited. Were you able to pull any prints?
We pulled the thumbprint off. The lady didn't want to mess with the imprint. She wanted to leave it there. She said it stayed there for months.
Really greasy, really
Yeah.
greasy. Which is again another trait we've heard. Through a lot of interviews. Yeah.
Do they look oily?
Yeah.
When
Really
you see it up
oily.
close.
What's your guys' favorite location to go to? Like, what's your like in our area, and like because we have multiple. Hey, there's the cat. What's your favorite area to go to?
Oh,
I'm gonna let you answer because I don't know what all you wanna,
the main area that we get, the one that with the campsite next to it.
The trail.
Yeah.
Yeah. That one's fun.
I would say that's the one that the most stuff happens on.
And I think that's because I think that they're wedged. If you look at on Google Earth, the area right there, they're all wedged in that whole region.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the rest of it outside of it's just fields.
Yeah.
So if you leave the park, you're crossing fields unless you're following the river bottoms.
And those river bottoms reach out pretty far.
Oh yeah.
I love the trail. That place is. So there was so much like the physical evidence of like the tree breaks in that area, of like some of the trees that were downed across the trail over the years, that when we've gone there, it's like, holy crap. Yeah.
Yeah, entire trees.
Yeah.
I don't mean like tree breaks, like some limbs.
They're
like the
there,
entire tree
like
popped
mass.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was one. I have a lot of like footage from it from when I was down there for that, like the 10-day trip we did, the big expedition we had first done. Again, I've been going back through all that footage. But there is like that one massive tree when you first kind of come in, like the first 100 yards. It's a really nice tree. It has like I don't know what kind it was. I have to look it up, but yeah, that's the one that was broken off. It's full ass tree, just snapped in half, and then just laid across the top of the trail, and it was.
And it was laid down the trail too, like down a length of the trail, so it made it hard to go down the trail. Period.
Yeah, and then also once you go deeper in, there was like all the wallows we found, tree arcs, and then one of my favorite ones was, it was further in. I think it was over by. We just so the viewers know, on the trail we get to one spot, we have a tree we knock on. At that point, there was one of the days we were out, I remember seeing off in the distance, I was like, man, that's an odd shape. And there was just a massive tree just wedged between like 4 trees up, like so high up.
Yeah, like 40, 50 foot up. Yep.
And the break for that tree was like way the hell over someplace else. So it was like, how the hell did that break get from there to there? Yeah, there's so much like weird stuff that's happened there. You have I think it's on the YouTube page. It's you think it's what you think is Archie off in the distance. It's like not the best video, but like you see something
where
like
it's going over the root ball, like this.
Yeah, it's like looking at you and like moving. Yeah, there's some got a lot of you have some great video evidence from that trail. My favorite, of course,
where most of it's from.
Yeah,
that one area.
My favorite's the quarry, of course. We don't really ever go back there because it's too hard to get back there. But that's where it all started for me. So there's just.
I was gonna ask, like,
go ahead.
How many people do you think you've interviewed or taken, sightings from, just in this area, Middle Tennessee?
About 135.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And that's just in this area.
We've talked about that there was a map. When did you start working on this? I'm going to show a little bit of it.
What don't you want to show?
I'm not sure.
Well, that's where we were earlier.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to zoom out of all of the pins that
all the yellow is Sasquatch sightings. All the white are caves.
This is just, And that's just that area.
Yeah, that's Tennessee.
Like, and that's.
I mean, some of it. I commented on this one earlier. It was like area where Daniel Boone claimed, it disappeared. Claimed to have killed Bigfoot. What year?
Yeah,
was that?
Yoo-hoo. Yep.
Where did
1982.
Where did Teddy Roosevelt shoot one? Where was that?
He didn't shoot one. One of his
buddies got killed by one, right?
A friend of his, who was a trapper, claimed to have basically lost a trapper friend to something.
Oh, so it wasn't Teddy Roosevelt then? It was just a story from a friend?
It was Teddy Roosevelt, but he was retelling the story that his trapper friend had told him.
Gotcha. So how do we let's talk about our on-site investigations. I mean, we have a few main areas that we go to. We haven't really been up there. You've been going out? Have you guys been going out often recently?
No, I can't get Randy out.
No.
Yeah.
I can't get Randy out, so.
That's not true. You've been busy as hell.
I can't get
partially, but yeah.
But a lot of these interviews, the people that we meet, they contact us. That's a big part of this, with those markings, and just so people at home can understand. People reach out to our team to kind of look into this, which I never really thought would happen until you started being like, I'm getting emails about stuff, and people want me to come check out their property and stuff.
Yeah. I've had several people that's asked me to do that, just to come out and tell me if there's Bigfoot on the property. I'm like, man, I can't do that. Like, I don't. That's not how it works.
Just come out like, just go.
Basically, come out. It's like, you've got woods. You might have a Bigfoot. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to tell you.
You have woods. It's almost like Florida. Like, oh, you have a body of water, so there's more than likely a gator in there. Like, oh, you got some woods back here. I remember when we went up to, what was I'm trying to remember the area without giving away the area. We met a friend of yours. He was a younger guy. He wanted to go with us. We parked at his house, and then we went into his backyard, and then up into the trail. I don't think it was...
that dude.
Yeah. And this is a favorite story of mine, because we went up, and he definitely thought we were probably just like kind of fucking around. And then he saw like the amount of camera equipment I had, and like equipment that I brought to like document with. And then he started getting he only stuck with us for like, I want to say 20 minutes up the trail. And then all of a sudden there was a point he fucking disappeared. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, where did he go? He's like, I think he headed back. I think he got freaked out. I think we had gotten a few wood knocks or something. But I remember us going back up and then coming back down and being like, yeah, they definitely got something going on here. And then once we got back to where the car was parked in his driveway, we were coming back through the backyard. And as we were coming through, that's when I noticed from, looking at the house, the amount of tree arcs in his backyard, in all the backyards, that like all of a sudden I was like, oh, you see it now. Like you see in all these markers from the backside, what they possibly, what they're seeing. And that was really freaky. And I think that's what freaked the kid out. Cause I remember when we first walked in and he was like, oh, what's the sign of it? And I was like, well, one of these tree arcs right here. That was the first one I noticed. I didn't think about it until we came back and I saw all of them in all of the backyards.
Yeah.
And that's something I wish I knew what those meant. I think they're territory markers, but yeah. Now
I've seen tree arcs up at Fall Creek Falls, man, that were so big that I don't even understand how the tree didn't break, that it was pulled over like that.
Just bent down, yeah. Now, when you do the on-site, like when you go out, because you guys do it more than I've gotten to do, but talk about how you conduct, the on-site, like coming out to someone's house. Like how do you get them to talk to you? I mean, they've already reached out, but how do you kind of keep them calm? How do you keep them like not freaking out that there might be an ape man in their backyard?
I mean, I've had people ask, like when we went and talked to the people with the facial imprint, they were asking us, they're like, should we be worried? Should we be blah? And it's like, no, they've obviously they're not gonna bother you. And that's when she was like, well, I always thought that they were just keeping an eye out for me.
Probably are.
Most of the time, if they've contacted us, they want to talk to somebody.
Mm.
So it's not that hard to get them to talk. And most of it's just coming down. It's just listening to people. Like Houston said before, you're going to hear the same stories over and over and over again. Almost to the point that it kind of gets boring in a way.
Yeah. I'm always waiting for the like, hey, we got something, and it's like, hey, did something crazy happen? It's like, nah, it was the normal. It's like the normal, like, check the box. There was wood knocks. There was this, a rock got thrown. It's like, all right, come on.
They saw it and turned around and walked into the woods.
Yeah.
With 90% of sightings.
What was the last one that we went to? It was pretty much that, and then like we walked into their backyard and kind of like peeked around a little bit, left, and then like she called like 3 days later. And she's like, "Yeah, there was just a helicopter back there, just like hanging out." Right where you guys were. I was like, "Oh."
She's like, "Did you guys call? Did you guys get the black helicopters called on me?" And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "You guys went out here on your field investigation." And she's like, "Now there's black helicopters buzzing my house." And it's like, okay.
That's, yeah. But, I mean, there's a lot of military. Yeah. There's a lot of military bases, though, in the South. So, that, I mean, that's, I mean.
She was convinced that they were buzzing her property.
Oh,
she was
okay.
Convinced.
I'm not gonna, argue that. Because I mean, she would probably notice if that's a common occurrence, she probably wouldn't have raised an eyebrow.
We have asked for people, like, if they're comfortable, if we can record them. I do think Mark has that on her. That whole conversation we had.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I know I don't have it.
Miss Stotts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's been on different YouTube channels telling her story too.
Oh, yeah. Really? Okay. Maybe we can talk to her. Maybe we can get her on.
She's had 2 sightings, technically. Miss Stotts has. She had one when she was going up. Whenever we go up on the mountain, the road you take to go up on the mountain, she was actually going up there back in 2011, and she said that the lights hit this thing, and she said this thing just calmly turns around, like, and puts its back to the car, and the car just lights up the back of it, but it just stands there while the car goes by.
I remember her talking about like her looking at the guardrail and how much more like taller it was,
Then the
and like we
guardrail,
were there and stood by it, and it was like over our knees and stuff.
Yeah.
This thing was just
That's
lurching.
That's again another common, like, I say check the box, but like a common thing we get told is like we see it, it looks at me, and it just kind of hides its face, or it like just turns around and just stays still, and it's just like, if I don't move, like, they'll just keep going.
Yeah. It makes me. It really does make me wonder how many times you just walk past these things in the woods and they just.
I mean,
So
the jazz photo. I mean, that's from the trail, and from where that photo is from your GoPro. I mean, jazz is legitimately no more than 10 feet, 15 feet from you.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
and like,
right there in front of me.
I try to, and I think I talked about this before, is like coming down to Tennessee, being someone from New England, and then coming down, people just don't understand the terrain down there unless you're from there. Like, you could hide out there, man. Like the vegetation, the growth. I mean, is it Japanese arrowhead vines that are just everywhere?
Kudzu.
Yeah, the kudzu. Yeah, the
right
kudzu. That's just like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's just blankets of it. Like, things you could, and I always get, people always. I have a bunch of buddies up here who always like, how could something like this exist? And I always try to explain this. It's just like, if you grew up in the woods, your entire, like, born there, raised there, like your whole, that's your world, like, you're gonna know it better than when someone just walks in. You're gonna know how to, like, deal with, it's your home. So I mean, you can hide. It's home field advantage. I said, so that's why it's hard, man. And I said, most witnesses we get is just an accident happening. They catch one just not paying attention and just, oh crap.
Yeah, a lot of it. Yeah.
There was this story, and I'm bringing it up because I saw it on the map. The mother and daughter that kind of were walking down the trail, and then one walked out on the trail that she described it was a female, like, turned around, like, was startled, and then also was like, oh no, like, and then like, took off.
She said it had the expression on its face of, oh, sorry.
Yeah, like, I scared you, and then like took off. So it, like, I find these encounters so, like, kind of comical, just because they just seem to be accidents most of the time. And down in our research areas, like, I feel like we got pretty chill Tennessee Wildmen.
Oh, we do. We
They're
definitely do. If they wanted to hurt us, if they're as violent as some of these people on podcasts talk about, so
not in our area, guys. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna say that, and where we investigate and do our field research, it's I think there was only one time I was like kind of scared, and that was when we stayed the night in the quarry. But even then,
That's creepy to begin with. Yeah.
Yeah, that was, we decided to spend the night in the quarry, and there was definitely something saying outside the cave. And that
because I remember there's a hill when you go out the quarry, and I told Manny when we got up there, I'm like, wait and see. I'm like, whenever we leave the cave, you're going to hear them go off up there. You're going to hear wood knock up on top of the cliffs there. And as soon as we walked out, swack whack, where they're keeping an eye on us
every time. And then there would be a response across the ridge line from the other one, or another one up there. That was the same overnight, that when we went out into the, like, at night, it's like, it was such bad conditions too to try to do anything.
It was 2 o'clock in the morning too. Yeah.
Yeah, we stayed up. We had a nice camp, man. We had that awesome fire inside the cave.
And That
But
place echoes anyway, like that. I couldn't
yeah,
imagine.
yeah, it throws sound off like crazy inside the cave, which made it hard, especially staying in it, figuring out because there was times that it sounded like something else was in the cave, but it was like the way the sound was hitting, it was really like Randy moved, and the sound, yeah. But on that trip when we'd be outside the cave and we kept going in and out, it was kind of drizzling a lot of the time,
Yeah.
so couldn't bad fucking camera capture, of course. I mean, I recorded as much as I could, and then the audio, of course, we couldn't capture any audio, but I remember sitting out outside the cave over by there's a little pond inside the quarry we're over by, and up on that ridge line we were hearing, it was the first time I heard the samurai talk, hearing it just just mumbling up on the ridge.
Yeah.
And that was after I set out. We had that big lantern. I mean, we had the big lantern.
Yeah.
It had the red light setting, and I always, you hear like they don't like the color red. That's been something I've heard through the the research community. Like they don't like red lights. So of course I put the big 1,000 lume lantern in the middle of the thing and just turned it to red. And that's when we got the samurai chatter up on the ridge, which I thought was creepy. It was very,
Yeah, it was like 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that the question is, what is up on top of the ridge at 2:00 in the morning mumbling?
Yeah. I never went up on the ridge. I don't know. Have you? You've gone
I've
up
been
there.
up there
You've been
several
up there.
times.
And now on that ridge line, we've talked about this, but we haven't talked about it in a while. There used to be like a wellness resort up there, right? Because there's like a mineral springs.
Oh, up top of the mountain there. Yeah, back in the 1800s, there and early 1900s, there was a resort on top of the mountain, and there's 7 springs up there.
Mm-hmm.
And supposedly, according to all the little advertisements from back in the day that survived, people would travel from all over the place to go up there and get in those mineral springs, and supposedly, they had healing properties according to the.
I think that's
according to the.
There it is.
Yep, there it is.
Yeah, so up into the corner, if you see where like the they kind of the ridge lines intersect, was kind of, you can't really see it because it dips in, but that's where we were hearing the samurai chatter, and me and Randy were down on that flat area by the water's edge, because that place is gorgeous. That place is so gorgeous in the summer, and that water is like emerald green all the time.
Yeah, that doesn't do it justice there.
Yeah. That place is. I've been going back through that footage, and like when we kind of come out of the woods into it, it's like, oh my god, you get kind of a good scope of it. It's gorgeous. It's just like the quarry just fascinates me. It's just like there was a lot going on there, and there has been a lot going on of like human activity. The quarry being operated, the Mineral Springs Health Resort and stuff. And what was the top of
quarry? That quarry during part of the year is the only fresh water in that part of the mountain. So it makes sense that these things are going down there and using it.
Yeah. Well, there was one of the morning. I think it was in the morning. We had to leave. It was from the overnight. We went up. I think we went over to the pool to kind of wash up a little bit, but there was like oily. Do you remember that the fish were eating like the oil slicks on the top of the water that weren't there?
Yeah.
That was. I remember we went to wash, and then Randy's like, "You see the fish?" And it was just like,
they were just going like this to the top of the water.
And we were like, "What are they picking at?" And then we just noticed like kind of just like oil slicks, sitting in the water that they were eating at that weren't there like the day before, or at least that we didn't notice.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
I think this is the best picture I'm going to have of the inside of that thing, which just gives you some scope of how huge that thing is.
Yeah.
When you're, you know, that's where y'all were camping.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't you have the video?
Oh, yeah. I have the video.
Yeah, I think it was in the morning. We had to leave. It was from the overnight. We went up. It was. I think we went over to the pool to kind of wash up a little bit, but there was like
And that's like one corridor. There's like 4 corridors of that.
Yeah.
We were like flying the drone through there.
Yeah. That video is awesome. Yeah, that cave is so cool. It's massive. That's in the entrance, right? That's over by the entrance.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was a good trip. Any final things you guys want to say, talk about?
Not per se. I mean, there's hundreds of
I mean, we could
stories.
I
we
could
can
talk
go
about this
into,
forever.
You saw the map. Yeah. We could go on and on and on all day long.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap it up. Then. Let's call it a night on this episode then. Want to thank everyone for listening. Thank you for coming out to the Fortin. Say it for me, Randy.
Fortian.
The Fortian.
You still can't say it.
The Buren Tennessee podcast. We'll see you guys on the next one. I think we're gonna talk about anomalous hominids in Tennessee, Bigfoot and the Tennessee pygmies. I think we're gonna get into that a bit for the next one. I know you love talking about the little pygmies, Tennessee pygmies.
Yeah, they freak me out.
Yeah, they creep me the hell out. The stories about them freak me out. But yeah, everyone have a good night. Thanks for listening.
Take care, guys.